It's Kentucky Derby week on the Paddock Press Report. We take a look at the Derby and Oaks contenders, and we hear from a few rookies. It could be an extra meaningful day for Pin Oak Stud, and one of the youngest riders to saddle up for the Derby in the last 2 decades, Christopher Elliott, talks about this golden opportunity. Plus, a leading sire is sidelined, and the latest on a $10.5 million purchase. And the Classic division is heating up after a thrilling Oaklawn Handicap. The Paddock Press Report starts right now. Welcome and thank you for joining me for the Paddock Press Report. I'm Timothy Lateau. I'm starting up this new weekly horse racing show to talk all things about the sport. The show will feature interviews from people from across the industry and connections of horses. The show is all about you, the viewers, the horses, and of course the people that we interview on this show, just to bring you the best insight possible. I'm also hoping to take you to a variety of tracks as well. And I'm just really excited to cover this sport. I've been covering it for about 5 years now for different outlets at tracks like Saratoga, Keeneland, and Laurel Park. And now is just a great time for me in my career to start this show. And I'm excited to take you along with the journey as well to do that. We'll have so many interesting guests on this show. I'm really excited to start. And what better week to start than Kentucky Derby week with so much excitement on the line? You know, it doesn't get any better than this week. And now we'll take a closer look at each of the contenders by order of post position. In the number one hole, there's the favorite, Renegade, 4-1 odds left to overcome the tough inside post. Trained by Todd Fletcher, ridden by Irad Ortiz Jr. He went last to first in the Arkansas Derby impressively, did the same in his other start as a 3-year-old in the Sam F. Davis Stakes at Tampa Bay. Number 2 is Albus, a 30-1 shot. He won the Wood Memorial for trainer Riley Mott, his first Derby starter, and jockey Manny Franco. Number 3 is Intrepido, 50-1 long shot here, a big price there for trainer Jeff Mullins, jockey Hector Barrios. He's coming off of a 4th place run in the Santa Anita Derby. Number 4 horse is a Litmus Test, 30-1 odds for trainer Bob Baffert and Martin Garcia. He's trying to rebound from a 7th place finish in the Arkansas Derby. He was 3rd in the Rebel Stakes. The number 5 horse is Right to Party at 30-1 for trainer Kenny McPeak. Jockey Chris Elliott makes his first ever Derby start at just 20 years old. This horse was the runner-up in the Wood Memorial. The 6th horse is Commandment. He's 6-1 in odds for trainer Brad Cox. Jockey Luis Saez. He won the Florida Derby impressively in a tight photo finish over the Puma. Number 7 is Dannon Bourbon, 20-1 long shot here from Manabu Aikazo and Atsuya Nishimura. He won the Fukuryu Stakes. This horse has only run clockwise. This is his first ever race running counterclockwise, a left-hand turn. We'll see how he handles that. He is the best rated horse out of all the international contenders. Number 8 is So Happy at 15-1 odds. He won the Santa Anita Derby for trainer Mark Latt and 59-year-old jockey Mike Smith. Number 9 is the Puma at 10-1 for Gustavo Delgado. Javier Castellano is up. They won the Derby back in 2023 with Mage. This horse, the Puma, was the runner-up in the Florida Derby at tight photo finish. Number 10 is Wonder Dean at 30-1 for Daisuke Takeya Nagagi and Ryusei Sakai. He won the UAE Derby impressively, shipped in from Japan to do that. Number 11 is Incredibolt, 20-1 odds for trainer Riley Mott. 2nd Derby start here in his first ever Derby appearance. Then jockey Jaime Torres, he won the Virginia Derby impressively, a 1-turn, mile and an 1/8 race. Number 12 is Chief Wallaby, 8-1 in odds for trainer Bill Mott, Junior Alvarado, 3rd in the Florida Derby. It's a tight finish among the top 3 finishers. Number 13, Silent Tactic, 20-1 odds for trainer Mark Cassie and Christian Torres in his first ever Derby. This horse was 2nd in the Arkansas Derby. Number 14, Patente. He is 20-1 for Bob Baffert, his best shot in the race. And then Juan Hernandez, he was the runner-up in the Santa Anita Derby. 15 is Emerging Market, 15-1 odds for the Louisiana Derby winner, trained by Chad Brown, ridden by Flavian Pratt. Number 16, Pavlovian, 30-1 for trainer Doug O'Neill. Jockey Edwin Maldonado, a journeyman jockey, making his first Derby start. This horse was the runner-up in the Louisiana Derby there to Emerging Market. Number 17, 6-speed, 50-1 long shot for trainer Bupat Seymour and jockey Brian Hernandez Jr. He was 2nd in the UAE Derby. Number 18 is Further Ado, 6-1, co-2nd choice for trainer Brad Cox. John Velasquez has the call. This horse won the Bluegrass Stakes by a wide margin. Let's see what he does on Saturday. Number 19, Golden Tempo, 30-1 long shot here for trainer Cherie DeVoe and jockey Jose Ortiz. He was 3rd in the Louisiana Derby. Number 20 is Full Effort at 20-1 odds for trainer Brad Cox and Tyler Gaffleone. He won the Jeff Ruby Stakes. That was on synthetic. There's 4 also eligible horses drawn into the race. The first one on that list is Great White. He is a 50-1 long shot who was 5th in the Bluegrass Stakes. The others are Ocelli, Robusta, and Corona de Oro. All 3 of those other also eligibles are also 50-1 long shots. And the Kentucky Derby is a post time of 6:57 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be shown on NBC. And for all involved in the Derby, certainly has a lot of emotion. But for one owner, the day might carry even more weight. Pin Oak Stud lost its owner, Jim Bernhard, back in November. He bought the farm with his wife, Dana, just a few years ago. And the farm has never had any Derby starters until this year. They have not 1 starter, but 2. I caught up with farm manager Michael Hardy to talk about the extra meaning that this year has. So excited to be joined by Michael Hardy from Pin Oak Stud. Pin Oak has not 1 but 2 Derby starters this year, their first starters in the stud's successful history. Michael, how's it going today?
Great, Tim. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. It's an honor to sit here and chat about these great horses.
Sure, yeah, definitely. And yeah, Incredibolt with his win in the Virginia Derby, and then Albus winning the winning the Wood Memorial, excuse me, in their last 2 starts, enough points to qualify for the Derby. Just how are things kind of looking a few days out from the Derby now?
Yeah, everything since both preps so far, everything has gone to plan. Full credit really has to go to Riley and his team. They've done an excellent job with both of these colts before their preps, getting them all the way there from their 2-year-old year right through. And since obviously both of them victorious in their respective preps, that ratcheted up the pressure. And Riley just a calm, steady, cool customer, great pair of hands. We're just delighted that we have them with Riley. He's been such an asset to Pin Oak.
Sure, yeah, and Riley and Pin Oak teamed up to get Riley his first Grade 1 win back over the summer at Saratoga in the Saratoga Derby, and yeah, now making the first Derby starters for both Pin Oak and for Riley Mott. What's that kind of like? Both of you guys having your first starters in the Derby this year.
Yeah, it's hugely exciting, Tim. I mean, it's just the Derby. These races, this is what it's all about. If you can't be excited now, you're probably in the wrong business. It's there's an atmosphere, there's a buzz on the farm. I know that Riley has got a microphone in his face at every turn as well. I mean, it's a real it's a real circus kind of at this time of year with the runners, but it's such a privilege. It's such a privilege. We're so fortunate to be in this position. It's a testament, really a testament to Jim and Dana and what they've envisaged for Pin Oak and Ben, and how the Bernhard family have, come in to Pin Oak here as relatively new owners into the industry and being able to achieve such success. They're very driven people and very savvy and good, stewards of the horse and good stewards of the land. And it's great to see owners like that being rewarded with a starters, and let's hope winner of the Derby.
Sure, yeah. Let's talk kind of specifically about each horse. In Incredibolt, he was successful as a 2-year-old, winning a stake there at Churchill Downs in the street sense, and then he kind of had a head scratcher, in one of his outings at Gulfstream Park. Riley shortened him back up to that 1-turn West Virginia Derby. It really didn't shorten him up; it's mile and an eighth prep, but 1-turn Virginia Derby prepared him well with that win. Talk about kind of the horse and just, what kind of trip you think he needs to get in the Kentucky Derby to be successful.
Yeah, so he's obviously a very talented horse, and he's a horse that has a lot of speed. He's always shown precocity when he was here on the farm. The team here on the farm, the training side led by Joss, they always ranked him as one of the most precocious um, 2-year-olds, and thought he would be thought he would be able to go and run and be successful at 2. He is just a very, well-built horse. He's looks like a 2-turn type of horse. In a street sense, he kind of has a little bit of tactical, the ability to use his speed tactically. He ran a very different race to break his maiden at Churchill than he did to win the street sense. The Holy Bull, you just have to put a line through it. He didn't get a hold of the surface that day. I mean, I think that, it probably will cause people to overlook him for the Derby. But it's, he trained into the Holy Bull very, very well, and he trained after the Holy Bull, as good as Riley could really have wanted for him. Riley was really, really happy with how the horse trained between the Holy Bull and the Virginia Derby. So, you kind of just have to put a line through that start and just say, he didn't get a hold of the track that day. Going into the Virginia Derby, we were hopeful, confident, I would say, that he was going to run back to the horse that we knew he was as a 2-year-old. So it was great to see him step up and do that. Again, the Virginia Derby is obviously 1 turn, but we have no qualms in our mind about whether or not the horse can go 2 turns. He obviously did it as a 2-year-old, did it at Churchill. He seems like he wants to go the 1.25 mile distance. Wouldn't be anything out of his wheelhouse at all.
Sure, yeah. Kind of gets this longer, 6 or 7 week break leading into the Derby, training up to that. Talk about kind of like that decision that you and Riley kind of made to take that break, and then also, just how these last few weeks gone for him training up to the race.
Yeah, so obviously, 7 weeks from the Virginia Derby to the Kentucky Derby. It's not ideal timing, but the options were limited. You either kind of had to come back in 3 weeks to go to the Bluegrass, or come back in 4 weeks and go to the the name
The Lexington, yeah,
the
also
Lexington.
yeah.
Yes, neither seemed like a necessary step. He had obviously had enough points in the Virginia Derby, as he had enough points between that and the street sense to be able to go straight to the Derby, and Riley really felt confident that that was the best step for him, was to go and train into the Derby. He shipped back from Virginia. He shipped back down to Riley's base in Palm Meadows, just to make sure he had consistency, had good track, everything really, what he had, stayed within his routine. And again, full credit to Riley. He's been able to do that, been able to keep the horse down there. He put in some really sharp works, some really, impressive type of workouts down in Palm Meadows. And he's just shipped up here now. Got into Churchill on Monday. Monday just passed, so he'll train. He'll breeze over the track. Hopefully this weekend, all things being equal, and get his final breeze then at Churchill, and on we go from there.
Sure, yeah. And talking about Albus, winner of the Wood Memorial, that was a race that maybe came back a little bit lower as far as some of the numbers or speed figures. But what's your confidence like in the horse?
Yeah, we've always liked Albus. He's a different build of a horse to Incredibolt. He's much stronger, a little more robust, just a little kind of heavier type of a horse. He's a horse that's improving and improving all the time. He won the Wood and then showed his immaturity. When he got to the front of the pack, it's like he almost didn't know what to do. We think there's a lot more in Albus than those numbers would suggest. The times, they are what they are. I mean, but I wouldn't read too much into them. And I wouldn't read too much into the numbers. I think coming off of his maiden to step into a Grade 2 Derby prep horse, Derby prep and win, the way he did, taking the dirt in his face, having to go in between horses, and having to quicken to get to the front. It would give you good confidence going into a big field like the Derby that he has the mentality, the fortitude, the attitude to be able to run in a race like that. And we do think he has the talent to be able to run a race like that. Very, very well bred horse. Um, he has speed coming from the sire side. He's got some stamina back in there, but there's plenty there's plenty to like about Albus now. He could be a little sleeper.
Think so for sure, yeah. And obviously this derby will be incredibly meaningful with the passing of Jim back in November, which really I think caught the whole industry and state of Louisiana in a complete shock. It was such a sudden passing, and I'm sure that loss is still being felt. How are you and Dana and kind of your circle at the farm? How's everyone been doing?
Yeah, Jim's passing was a immense loss for everyone associated with Pinnock and beyond. Uh, Dana and Ben from the very first moments were always wanted to reassure and to communicate to all the employees and everybody here at Pinnock that we have a plan. We're business as usual. And that's been the thing that I think has really helped steady the ship and keep things going. Jim was a tremendous leader and a hugely influential person, both in his other businesses and obviously here at Pinnock, and we certainly feel his loss. But what Dana and Ben have been able to do to carry forward and bring forward the legacy is truly phenomenal. And I'm so delighted for them on a personal level that they're able to have success this year with the horses. That obviously this is still very much part of Jim's legacy. He's very, very important in bringing forward these horses to the track. So it's great to see them
Definitely.
materialize, to see the plan materialize the way that he would have wanted it to.
Yeah, yeah. Winning two big Derby preps. Yeah, you can't ask for much more than that. What do you think that a win next Saturday would mean for you and the rest of the team?
I mean, it would be, it would be something quite incredible. You dare not dream really about these things. You never want to get too high or too low in this business, but for what we want to do at Pinnock, the way we want to run our horses, if to win the Derby would just be a real icing on the cake. It's obviously one of the biggest races in the business, if not the world. The feeling of winning something like that, I can't even imagine.
For sure. Yeah. Well, we'll certainly be rooting for you. A great storyline and two really great chances in the race. So I really appreciate your time, Michael. Yeah. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
No, you're welcome, Tim. Thanks for having me. And yeah, we will hopefully have a successful first Saturday in May.
Pinnock and Riley Mott are not the only connections in the field with a first-time Derby experience. There's also 20-year-old jockey Christopher Elliott, who is the youngest rider in nearly 20 years to ride in the Kentucky Derby. He knows he is fortunate to be in this spot. His father, Stuart Elliott, was 40 years old when he rode in his first Kentucky Derby. That was in 2004 with Smarty Jones, who also went on to capture the Preakness Stakes. Christopher Elliott wasn't even born at that point. He was born 2 years later. He is a Eclipse Award finalist for Champion Apprentice Jockey last year, and he knows he is fortunate to be in this spot to already have made the Derby starting gate at just 20 years old. It is an honor to be joined by Chris Elliott, who's soon to be one of the youngest riders to ride in the Derby in recent years, the youngest in almost 20 years. And Chris,
Yeah,
it's great to talk with you ahead of Derby week. How's everything going?
everything's good. Everything's good. I'm excited. I'm just really excited. And I'm gonna get to go into Churchill.
For
So
sure, yeah. That fact that you're one of the youngest riders in recent years, I think since 2007. What's it like knowing that you have this opportunity at a young age and your trainer Kenny McPeak stuck with you?
Yeah, it's huge. You know, I give all the credit to you know, Kenny McPeak and Jimmy Jerkins, who had the horse here in New York all meet all winter, and I'm just very fortunate. I really appreciate them keeping me on the horse. You know, I was just happy to get the horse to the, you know, get him enough points to go to the Derby, and them keeping me on, I'm ecstatic. I'm just super grateful. So
Yeah, he was a long price in the Wood Memorial and pretty far
yeah.
back towards the back of the pack. What were you kind of thinking as the race developed?
Yeah, you know, I knew I had to make just one run on them. I knew they'd be going fast. I knew that you know, there was quite a few speed horses, Napoleon Solo, Talk to Me Jimmy. So I knew I would have some pace to run into. And that's exactly what happened, you know. He finished strong at my horse finished strong at the end too. He came running. So I was happy with his effort.
Yeah, I think a big part of that was on the turn. You saved a lot of ground, right? And then, down the
Yeah,
stretch, you kept riding all the way through the wire, maybe knowing
right.
that those precious Derby points were on the line. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I knew I had to run at least second for him to be able to get to the Derby. So that was the whole goal, you know, win or run second, and just the top two. And that we were lucky enough to run second. So that was huge.
How do you kind of envision? I know, we're talking ahead of the Derby draw playing out, which always is, so many different
Right.
factors kind of as far as, where you're starting in that starting gate. But how do you
Yeah.
kind of envision the race playing out for right to parties style?
I talked to Kenny about the race, you know, and we were talking. He seems to think a rail trip will be our best shot to win the race, and I totally agree. I think, you know, if I can ride the rail the whole way, that'll probably be our best chance to win the race. And that's what I'm gonna do. I hope I can get, you know, a mid pack post position, you know, somewhere in there would be great. Try to get a clean break and just stay out of my horse's way. Try to get him as clean of a trip as possible.
Sure, yeah. I know some of those numbers and speed figures came back from the Wood Memorial. They weren't
Right.
necessarily the highest. I'm sure Right
Yeah.
to Party is going to be, one of the longer shots in the race. But
Yes,
what's your
for
confidence
sure.
level like in the horse?
Well, what I like about the horse is there's a lot of horses in that race that don't want to go a mile and a quarter, and my horse does. That's one thing for sure. My horse, the more distance, the better. So I feel good about that. And it's the derbies. There should be a lot of pace in the race. They should be going fast up front. So if they do, I think we have a good shot. I think he'll run well. Um, you know, if it would rain, that would even help. If we had like a deep track, that would help even more. So
Sure,
yeah.
yeah. And what does your week for the Derby kind of look like? Tell me what that week looks like for you.
It looks good. I'll be there. The first day I get there is Wednesday, the 29th. I fly in on the 28th. Um, I'll work horses in the morning and then ride. I'll ride that Wednesday all the way through Derby Day to Saturday. Yeah, I'm
Sure.
excited. I got a couple. I got 3 Wednesday, one in a stake. I'm excited. It's gonna be good.
Yeah. Do you have any big rides that you think are coming up that Derby week that you want to mention?
I believe I had a horse for the Pat Day Mile, but I believe they're not running there anymore. I think they're gonna choose a different spot. But other than that, I don't think I had anything else in any of the bigger races.
Yeah, yeah. What's this like? Even just kind of getting this opportunity to be in the Derby and at such a young age, and a lot of jockeys might wait years or maybe never even get
Right.
experience and
Yeah, you know,
later
it's
on in your
it's
career.
it's it's huge. I'm very thankful. You know, there's a lot of guys who have been riding for 20, 30 years who are really good riders that, you know, have never been in the right place, or they never got the right opportunity to get a horse to go to the Derby. So for me to, you know, have been fortunate enough to do it so early on in my career, I'm just really grateful.
Sure,
You
yeah.
know.
Let's kind of talk about the beginnings of your career too. Your dad, Stuart Elliott, Derby and Preakness winning jockey with Smarty Jones back in '04. He's had,
Yeah.
quite a successful career and really had a number of different tracks and circuits that he's been riding at. But for you,
Yeah.
it wasn't just this, preconceived thing that you were going to be a jockey, right?
Yeah, you know, I really didn't decide what I was gonna do till I was about 14 years old. Um, and that's kind of when I decided, like, I'm gonna ride. And my dad was very supportive. You know, he helped me in every way possible. Started getting me on the pony, and you know, that's how I started.
Yeah, yeah. And tell me, just kind of what your career's been like. You've had your agent Jose Santos, that's worked with you really kind of since the start, right? How has that, kind of
Yes.
played out the last couple of years working with him and moving around to different circuits? Now you're mostly at Naya, right?
Yeah, no, it's been great. I rode my first race at Lone Star Park in Dallas, Texas, and after that race, I won the race. And after that race, he sent me a message on Instagram, and we started working together ever since. Yeah, he's been really great. We're good friends, not just business wise, in real life too. And he does a great job for me. He's a huge part of my success. So
Or yeah. Does your dad are there any other jockeys too that you kind of lean on for advice or maybe look up to in the jocks room?
yeah, for sure. Manny Franco, I watch him all the time. I think he's a great rider. Kendrick Carmouche, he's another great one. There's a lot of good guys in this room. Everybody, I watch everybody here in New York. They're all good riders. So
Yeah. And I know your dad was a couple decades older than you when he had his first derby. That was with Smarty Jones, right? Well,
with Smarty Jones,
yeah.
yeah.
Has he had any kind of advice or anything for you, or have you guys talked about the derby coming up?
Yeah, we've talked. He told me the same thing. Just go out there and ride it. Like, of course, there's a lot of pressure on you because it's the Derby, but just go out there and ride it like it's any other race. Go do your job. And honestly, I don't feel too much pressure. I feel really good about it. I'm more than anything. I know that who knows, I might never get the opportunity to go again. So I got to ride it. This is the race of a lifetime for me. So I'm just more than anything. I'm excited, and I can't wait to ride the horse.
Yeah, definitely the
But
race of a
he
lifetime.
did give me some good advice. Just brake clean, try to get as clean of a trip as possible, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Sure, yeah,
So
yeah. And yeah, you're 20, you weren't even born yet, when your dad won the Derby
right,
with Smarty Jones in the Preakness, but I know you've watched the replays too. What's that like kind of,
yeah,
going back and, I'm sure that horse is, one of your favorites of all time still.
yeah. I've watched the Derby 1,000 times, the Preakness, and the Belmont even so many times. A special horse, it's a cool story from Philadelphia Park. It was really cool.
Sure, yeah. I know even early on in your career, you've had a number of stakes win yourself. Where does kind of right to
Yeah,
party rank as far as some of your favorite horses? He's stakes placed, and you've had a couple of other winners.
right.
Talk about some of the favorite horses that you've gotten the chance to ride.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to ride some good horses. He's definitely probably up there. I'd say he's my favorite horse I've ridden just because he's continually getting better with every start. And I think he's got a lot of ability, He's a very good horse. I've been fortunate to ride some nice horses. I got to ride Crazy Mason. He won the quarter last year. I didn't ride him in the quarter, but I've rode him a couple of times. And I've been fortunate. New York's been good to me.
Definitely, yeah. I know with Right to Party, he has progressed quickly too. He went from, winning his maiden, I think, to, third in the Gotham, second in the Wood.
Right.
You kind of
Yeah.
seen, with that progression.
Yeah, like when I rode him first time out and the race was 6 furlongs, he came running really, really nicely at the end. And I knew as soon as they would stretch him out to a mile, he was going to win. And that's what he did. And then in the Gotham, that he's just a horse that the more distance, the better. So, a mile and a quarter, I think, suits him very well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Chris, really appreciate you taking the time. Best of luck Derby week. I know it'll be a big one for you. And yeah, hope
Thank
you
you.
do well. We'll be rooting for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And shifting now to the grade one, $1.5 million Kentucky Oaks. It'll be run Friday night under the lights for the first ever time with a late post of 8:40 p.m. Eastern time. It'll be shown on NBC. And that late post time allows for that main network coverage. The first time ever. A full field of 14 had been drawn for the race. And another horse will be drawn into the race, one of those also eligibles, because Bottle of Rouge, Bob Baffert trainee who won the Sunland Park Oaks, scratched out of the race with a cough. We'll go through the field in order of post position here. The number one horse is Baffert's other entrant, 6-1 shot Explora. She won the Honeybee Stakes a long layoff, and she heads into the Oaks. Number two horse here is Zany, is the 4-1 favorite for trainer Todd Pletcher. Jockey Irad Ortiz has the mount. She was second in the Ashland Stakes, her first career loss. She still is the favorite, though. Number three is Search Party, 30-1 shot for trainer Mark Casse. Jockey Christian Torres gets the ride. Second in the Fantasy Stakes. Number four, Counting Stars, 8-1. Trainer Mark Casse again. Francisco Arietta up. She won the Fantasy Stakes. The number 5 horse is Meaning, a 5-1 shot for trainer Michael McCarthy, and Juan Hernandez Jr. had his pick of this filly. She won the Santa Anita Oaks. Number 6, My Miss Mo, 20-1 for Staffy Joseph Jr. and jockey Micah Husbands, second in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. Number 7 is Dazzling Dame, 30-1 shot for trainer Brittany Russell, and Louis Saez is up. She was the runner-up in the Virginia Oaks. As I mentioned, number 8, Battle of Rouge, was 15-1. She scratched. Number 9, Always a Runner, 10-1, trainer Chad Brown. Jose Ortiz are hoping that this inexperienced and lightly raced filly who won the Gazelle Stakes in just her second start can pull it off. Number 10 is Prom Queen, 8-1 for trainer Brad Cox and jockey Javier Castellano. She won the Gulfstream Park Oaks. Number 11 is Percy's Bar, a 6-1 shot who upset the Kentucky Oaks favorite Zany for trainer Ben Colebrook, jockey Luan Mercado. She won the Ashland Stakes then. Number 12 is Bella Ballerina, 12-1 for trainer Brendan Walsh and jockey Tyler Gaffleone, second in the Fairgrounds Oaks. Number 13, Pashmina, is 30-1 for trainer Rob Atris and Ramon Vasquez. She was the runner-up in the Gazelle Stakes. Number 14 is Brooklyn Blonde, 30-1 shot for trainer Michael McCarthy and jockey Kazushi Kimura. She was second in the Santa Anita Oaks. Number 15, Lovely Gray, is 30-1. She draws into the race for trainer Kelsey Danner. Jockey Dylan Davis is up, owned by Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports. She was second in the Bourbonnais Oaks on the synthetic at Turfway Park. There are 2 other also eligibles in the race. A 50-1 shot Nikon, who was fourth in the Gazelle, and then 17 horse Resist, 30-1, third in the Bourbonnais Oaks. We'll see if those 2 draw and if there are any other scratches. That's the field for the Kentucky Oaks. And there was a major blow in breeding this week. Prominent sire Curlin is on the shelf for the remainder of the breeding season. The 22-year-old stallion at Hillendale Farms at Jalapa has had low fertility. Farm leaders say the son of Smart Strike successfully bred 20 mares this season, but more recently, a number of mares he covered were not in full. The farm says a veterinarian examined him and found low fertility levels. They say within the last few weeks, the former 2-time Horse of the Year also had what vets say is an unusual ulcer found outside his stomach, as well as a 102-degree fever. Curlin leads Hillendale's stallion roster with an advertised stud fee of $225,000. He's the first stallion in history to sire 3 Breeders' Cup winners in one weekend, which he did back-to-back years in 2022 and 2023. His career highlights include wins in the 2007 Preakness Stakes, 2007 Breeders' Cup Classic, and a 2008 Dubai World Cup. Curlin had been booked to 98 mares this season. Some of those unbred mares will have the opportunity to go to Good Magic. The farm says it hopes Curlin will be back to stud duties next season, but they say the priority of the horse's health comes first. Meanwhile, cause for celebration for owner Amr Zedan and trainer Bob Baffert after they landed a $10.5 million 2-year-old Flightline colt at the Ocala Breeders' Sales. It is a record for the sale. And this colt is the second most expensive 2-year-old ever sold in North America. The colt's by Flightline out of Lucrezia and Into Mischief mare, who won the 2020 Suncoast Stakes and was second that year in the Grade 2 Gulfstream Park Oaks. This colt breezed a spectacular furlong in 9 seconds and 3/5. Donato Lani was Zedan's agent. The colt was consigned by Hartley Dorenzo Thoroughbreds, who pinhooked him for a now bargain $575,000 at the 2024 Keeneland Fall Sale as a weanling. In the Ocala Breeders' Sale, he started as a $1 million opening bid. This colt was bred in Kentucky by Edward Seltzer, Beverly Seltzer, and William Farish. The colt was flown to Santa Anita Park just 2 days after the sale to begin training with Bob Baffert. Zedan brought the previous record holder of the Ocala Breeders' Sale last year with Brandt for $3 million. Brandt, a now 3-year-old colt, won the Grade 1 Delmar Futurity last year for Baffert before running third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and now his only start this year was a 5th-place finish in the San Felipe Stakes. The Green Monkey sold for $16 million in 2006 to Coolmore and was also consigned by Hartley Dorenzo Thoroughbreds. He never won during his 3-race career. Injury plagued the career for trainer Todd Pletcher. His best finish was 3rd. He earned just over $10,000 in his career. Well, this year the Classic Division is certainly shaping up to be an excitingly tough one. This upcoming weekend in the Ali Sheba Stakes, you've got Baeza, Pennsylvania Derby winner from last year, taking on Skippy Longstocking, this year's Pegasus World Cup champion. It's an exciting matchup taking place in the Ali Sheba Stakes on the Kentucky Oaks undercard Friday evening. But just a couple of weeks ago, there was an exciting race in Arkansas, the Oaklawn Handicap, featuring a real three-headed threat. You had Sovereignty, the Derby, Belmont, and Travers champion from last year, Journalism, the Preakness champion, and then also White Abarrio, the 2023 Breeders' Cup Classic champ. All three of those horses going head to head to head. And Matt Dinerman, Oaklawn Park's announcer, said that Oaklawn Handicap is one of the most hyped races he ever had the opportunity to call in his career.
And the two runners squaring off on the lead with White Abarrio creeping in right behind. Publisher in fourth. He's 5 lengths off the pace with 5/16 to go. Here we go. Sovereignty on the inside. Journalism right there perched to his outside. And White Abarrio in with a good chance. 3 wide as they come off the turn here. Sovereignty on the inside. Journalism. White Abarrio confidently handled by Irad Ortiz. And he goes to the lead now. Sovereignty has given way to second. Journalism third. 16th to go. It's White Abarrio's win. It's his Oaklawn Handicap. And White Abarrio, an awesome champion, a veteran of the game. How cool is he? White Abarrio defeats Sovereignty and Journalism in an epic Oaklawn Handicap.
Well, it is such an honor to be joined by that announcer, Matt Dinerman, legendary announcer at both Oaklawn and Monmouth. And what a call of the Oaklawn Handicap that we had this year from Matt. Matt, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Tim. How are you?
Pretty good, yeah, pretty good. Really amped up this time of year with Triple Crown season and some of those handicap horses making their first runs of 2026. We saw Journalism and Sovereignty clashing once again in their respective debuts in 2026. Just tell me what you thought about the race.
I think it lived up to all the hype that was sort of surrounding it leading up to the race. I think you've got 3 really superstar horses there. White Abarrio, he won the Breeders' Cup Classic in 2023, the horse of the year. Sovereignty, we know how impressive he was as a 3-year-old. And then Journalism, a horse who's obviously no slouch. He won the Preakness, he won the Naira Betts Haskell. I was lucky enough to call him there as well. And it's not often you see these 3 titans sort of square off, especially coming off of layoffs with Sovereignty and Journalism. So I would say it was a pleasant surprise to see them both clash to start off their year. And just right when we turned for home, we had 3 of them battling for the win. They were really 1, 2, 3 the whole way around. So it ended up being a pretty uncomplicated race. And it was old-fashioned racing. It was who's fastest. Right when we turned for home, we're going to find out. Everybody got good enough trips. And it was just a thrill. And a lot of fans came out to see it at Oaklawn. The energy level was electric. So it was just really a great thing to be a part of. And it was a great thing for racing. I feel like racing needed that morale booster, that race that was really going to get everybody excited, not only for racing in general to showcase what a great sport we have, but also looking to the future and looking forward to future races for our older horses this year.
Definitely. What was going through your mind when you heard that, all 3 of these horses, they were kind of pointing towards the race and they were for sure. And when they drew in, what was that like, knowing that you were going to get a call this great matchup?
Well, I think the first thing I did was cross my fingers and just hope that they all stay healthy and sound. And you just never know. There takes just one little tiny thing for things not to quite get the stars to align, for lack of a better term. And really, it all just came down to the stars aligning, which it did. It stayed that way. The stars continued to align. And I was just really excited going into that race. And I wouldn't lie to you. I think that the stress levels, the pressure, they're at a pretty high point there calling a race like that because everybody's paying attention. You want to do a good job and you want to do the race justice. So going into the race, I sort of had the game plan of going back to basics with race calling. And really the race is about the race. It's about what happens on the track and the storyline around it. So go back to the basics. Don't try too hard. Just call what you see out on the track like I would any other race. And I think it's easy for an announcer to get really hyped up and excited for a big race and maybe be a little bit too effortful. So my goal was to be as effortless as possible and to get excited when it was warranted during that time down the stretch, for example, on the far turn, but to just not really overshadow the race and to basically call what I see. And I think it went well because I did not want a call, whether it be really bad or a little bit too much over the top, for that to overshadow what was happening on the track. So that was really my game plan going into the race, and I think I executed that. And I would have not liked to have seen a bunch of comments writing about whatever about the race call when it shouldn't have been about the race call. It should have been about the race. So, yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and I've never really experienced that type of pressure before, to be honest with you. Even with Grade 1 races I've called, this was just something new. And so it was exciting. It was a new experience for me to call a race of this magnitude, but it was thrilling. It really was.
Sure, yeah. Talking about the actual flow of the race, I think for me at least, it was a surprise to see Sovereignty on the lead. What were you kind of thinking at that moment? Is Junior Alvarado steered him towards the front and had him leading, going into the first turn.
Yeah, I think part of a good race caller is sort of being the voice of the fan and being the voice of thinking out loud of what other people are thinking. So I just noted in the call an unexpected pace setter, and that was very much the case. I think everybody was sort of taken aback by the fact that Sovereignty was on the lead. And we thought maybe White Abarrio, who ended up winning the race, would have the best chance of winning by going to the front, and it ended up not being that way. He got the trip that we thought maybe Sovereignty or Journalism would get. So it was a little bit of a surprise, but I think that's why, and one of my things that I really live by when I call races is let the race tell you what it needs and then provide it. And you basically cannot go into a race with preconceived notions. You can have an understanding of how horses run. You can have an understanding of very much what could happen, but you don't want to basically put all your eggs in that basket to try to predict beforehand what's going to happen. You want to call the race as you see it. And if something's developing, there's an infinite amount of things that can develop in a race with so many horses in a race. This only had 6, but there could be a million different things that could happen. So you just try to call what you see. And it was a surprise, definitely down the back stretch. I thought in the back of my mind, well, this is certainly not the way that all of us in the racing world were analyzing this race, trying to predict it the way to be. We certainly weren't expecting him to be on the lead. But that's the great thing about racing, is just sometimes these unexpected things make for really good storylines and talking points and good races.
Turning for home, you really couldn't have asked for a better setup with these three all banned across the track as they, hit the quarter pole there. What were you kind of thinking in those last, few, 20, 25 seconds of the race?
Well, around the far turn, it just looked like there were no other horses other than those big 3 that were going to make a dent in the race. Even Publisher, who was a bit of a wise guy horse, he'd won 3 races in a row. So about the top of the lane, we know that a showdown was coming up. Sovereignty and Journalism were really going head and head. And I called on the far turn 2 horses, Sovereignty and Journalism, were going at it. And I was going to mention something about maybe that rivalry that the media and people have been blowing up about these horses going head and head a few times. But then I took a peek and saw that White Abarrio, the way he was moving. And I pretty much knew at the 5/16 if he continues to run the way he looks to be running and the way IRAD is confidently riding him, I figured at about the 5/16 that he was the winner. So I wanted to make sure I keyed in on him, but not too hard. You don't want to say in a magnitude of that race, get too bold and say, White Abarrio, he's going to be your winner here, because you have champions right ahead of him, and you don't know if White Abarrio is going to hang. You don't know if other horses maybe have more horse than you'd expect. You just don't know. So you don't want to get too bold, but I think right when they turned for home, I had a pretty good idea that White Abarrio was probably going to win the race, but I was really excited because it didn't look like any of those horses were going to win in a runaway, and it ended up being White Abarrio won pretty comfortably, but it just seemed when I said, here we go, that's what it felt like here we go. We have these big 3 stars and they're getting ready to roll. And one thing that's great about race calling is the art of it, and feeling good about describing what's happening in the moment when it happens and saying that was authentic. I think I described it the right way. That's how I am. I don't like to script things. So just really saying, here we go in the race call, that felt to me like this is describing the moment, right? And that's what it felt to me. Here we go. These three big horses. We're going to find out who's the king today. So it was really just, like I said, a type of race that it lived up to the hype. It was exactly what we wanted to see. I think it would have been cool to see a runaway 6-length winner, but I feel like it'd be a little more exciting if turning from home those three lined up, which they did. And I thought they all had a good chance to win the race, and they all gave themselves decent chances to win the race.
Yeah, they for sure did. And I remember watching the call on someone's iPhone. We were at a track. I was with a group of like 5 people, and
Mhm.
yeah, he said, "Here we go," and everyone's drawing, and then they saw White Abarrio making that move. So yeah, it was a thrilling race, and really just a race I think of epic proportions. Where do you think that these horses could end up next, and like could all three of them meet at some point? You think before the classic, or sometime sooner than November at least?
I definitely think that White Abarrio and Sovereignty will meet again. I would think the Whitney at Saratoga would be a big possibility. I know that Sovereignty is pointing to the Stephen Foster at Churchill Downs in a couple months. So he will be running before the Whitney. I'm sure White Abarrio will as well. I haven't heard anything about where he's pointing next. Journalism, he's going to go to the Met Mile. It sounds like a goal for him, which is a cutback in distance of the 1 mile configuration. And I don't know if they're going to point him for mile and a 16th, mile and an eighth type of races. I have a sort of a gut that if I were to put up a crystal ball and look in the crystal ball, I would say come November, Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile would be an intriguing spot for a horse like Journalism. I could assume that there's a chance that they could meet again with Journalism, Sovereignty, and White Abarrio, but I think more likely you might see Sovereignty, White Abarrio running those classic distance races, maybe Journalism cutting back in distance, and it's now 3-0. It's not really a rivalry at this point because he hasn't finished ahead of Sovereignty, and I always felt like if he was going to finish ahead of Sovereignty, this race was going to be it. So it wouldn't surprise me if they steer clear from Sovereignty at least for a little while. But that seems like those are all the plans for these three.
Yeah, and that's really a good point too about shortening up for Journalism. He hasn't won at a mile and a quarter yet. Even the Pacific Classic last year when he wasn't with Sovereignty, then he had a deal with Fierceness, so who was a runaway winner in that race. So yeah. I wanted to switch over to talking about some of the Derby horses too. Obviously being in Oaklawn, it doesn't afford you just the opportunities to call the Oaklawn Handicap, Apple Blossom, but also the Arkansas Derby and really the whole trail along that way. And it culminated this year with Renegade winning the Arkansas Derby. What was it like getting to call this year's Arkansas Derby?
Yeah, that was a really fun race. Arkansas Derby is always a really fun day. Just a lot of people. It reminds me of opening day at Del Mar in a way. It's just, pageantry, people dressed up. It's a thing that when the ticket sales open for Arkansas Derby, definitely the day of all those ticket sales, all the seats in the grandstand are sold out. So it's a big, big deal here in the state of Arkansas. And being able to call that race is always a real treat. Obviously, we've seen probably the last 10, 15 years, especially the Arkansas Derby, really ramp up as a race that's a major Kentucky Derby prep. We've seen a lot of Kentucky Derby winners come out of that race, especially over the last couple decades. So you know that you're going to get decent horses. There's $1.5 million purse. That intrigues some really top-notch horses. And I think we saw it with Renegade this year. He's the probable morning line favorite, the probable favorite, post-time favorite in the Kentucky Derby. And I don't think he's bad chalk at all. I think that I've said it before. I think he really checks off all the boxes. I was really impressed with what I saw from him. He's got a great mind. He's very versatile, push button. Irad Ortiz rides him, and he gave him a crack of the crop. And that was it. This horse really took off. If you actually watch the replay of this year's Arkansas Derby, you can really actually see his legs and his stride quicken. I thought it was very impressive. So to be able to call a horse like him is really exciting, and it's exciting for Oaklawn. I know everybody here is really ecstatic to have a horse that looks like he's got a real good chance in the Kentucky Derby this year. And we saw a couple of years ago, Mystic Dan used the springboard to the Kentucky Derby through Oaklawn. So we've got another horse this year in Renegade, and Silent Tactics also going to be in the Kentucky Derby, and he's a horse that I think will, at the very least, like 1.25 miles. But I think Renegade's the horse to beat this year out of anybody in the country. I really believe that.
Yeah. Who do you think that, Irad and Todd Fletcher are kind of keeping an eye on for who could, be dangerous threats to them at Churchill? And I guess, any other long shots too that you think could also maybe be a factor that are flying under the radar?
Well, it's really an interesting scenario with Irad because he had three horses that he's ridden that are top horses that are probably the top three favorites that he was the regular rider for. Renegade, Commandment, and Further Ado. And Further Ado won the Bluegrass Stakes under Irad by the length of the stretch, it seemed. And he didn't beat the strongest group, but he did it the right way. This horse is only two massive efforts have come at Keeneland. He won at Churchill Downs before. He won a stake last year, but he just looked like a little bit of a different horse at Keeneland. So it'll be interesting to see if he regresses, if he can duplicate his Keeneland form to Churchill. But Irad selecting Renegade. So with that in mind, I would imagine Further Ado is one they're going to be keeping an eye on as a major contender to maybe beat Renegade, and also Commandment, a horse that won the Florida Derby. A very nice horse. Both runners, Further Ado and Commandment, trained by Brad Cox. So Brad's got a strong arsenal of Derby contenders this year. And Irad had a choice between Further Ado and Renegade, and he chose Renegade, and he chose Renegade over Commandment before the Florida Derby, and the Florida Derby's run on the same day as the Arkansas Derby. So I think all signs point to Irad at the very least, and his agent, Steve Rushing, really believing that this horse is the real deal. He's the one for this year's Kentucky Derby. And I think that speaks volumes, and that's obviously a big part of the storyline. It has to be. It has to be because it just tells you, it connects all the dots. It tells you who they think the best horse is, and their input's fairly important, I would say, and that'd be an understatement. I think Incredibolt's a little bit interesting. He won the Virginia Derby at a one-turn mile and an eighth, which is an odd configuration, but they run that at Colonial Downs. He's training into the race. He'll be running off an 8-week break, I think, so that's probably not the most ideal situation. I would have wished that maybe he had run 4 or 5 weeks before the race versus 8 weeks training him up. We haven't seen historically horses do well training up 8 weeks to the Kentucky Derby, but he really likes Churchill Downs. He's run a good race over it in the past as a 2-year-old. And he's a really nice horse, and I always think a lot of people have thought he was a nice horse. So he's somebody that's a little bit interesting this year. But I also think Silent Tactic's a horse that, even though I wouldn't pick him to win, and I'm not saying I like Renegade or Silent Tactic because they ran an Oaklawn, but I do feel that Renegade's the real deal. And I think that Silent Tactic's a horse that maybe if he can get the same type of scenario as he did in the Southwest, which is $1 million race here that he won, if he can get that scenario, he's got a good chance to at the very least outrun his odds because he's a son of Tacitus. Tacitus was very much a stayer, a distance horse. This horse is very much bred for distance. I like to look for horses that we know will like 1.25 miles. And he's a horse that, even though he's a bit of a plotter, he can stay on and he can run on into a fast pace. And we saw it in the Southwest. He ran in the Rebel and the Arkansas Derby as well. And both times the paces were a little bit on the slower side. He was closer to those paces. I feel he's a little bit better if he can sit well off, make a run into a fast pace. So he'd be one I'd at least look at underneath in exotics. I wouldn't love him to win. It could happen. We've seen a lot crazier things happen. I'd prefer others with a kick to win the race. I like horses that have a little bit of a kick like Renegade does, but it wouldn't surprise me if he outran his odds this year. So there's quite a few horses in the mix. Chief Wallaby's one that a lot of people have really liked adding the blinkers. I've always liked him, but I feel like he'll be a little bit of an underlay because a lot of people are on him because he's been working really sharp for Bill Mott. So those are some of the main contenders you've got, Tim. I think it's a really good crop this year of 3-year-olds, and I think it's going to be a really fun race.
Yeah, definitely an exciting time of year. And this time of year too is, when you're about to make a transition from Oaklawn to Monmouth. What's this time of year kind of like for you as an announcer switching tracks?
Well, it's an interesting scenario because on the one hand, it's so much mixed emotions right now. I have a place here. I bought this place here in Arkansas, so I really consider it my home now. And leaving home is never an easy thing, at least for me. I really like it here at Oaklawn. I really like it here in Hot Springs, and I really love the racing in the community here. And we're going to be going to a different part of the country and not seeing some friends for a little while. But at the same time, I'm also excited to see other friends that I've made in New Jersey, and getting a change of scenery isn't ever a bad thing. I enjoy changes of scenery. It's a beautiful place, Monmouth. Beautiful weather usually. There's the beach right next door to the track. great food, very high quality of living in the summertime in New Jersey. It's a really good place to summer. So I'm excited to get back there and excited to see friends. I think that's really the thing I'm most excited about when I go to different tracks and switch, is being able to see the people that I haven't seen in a little while. But at the same time, I also have that mixed emotion of I'm a little bit bummed to be leaving and not seeing people that I've made friends with here. So it's sort of a mix, and it's exciting because I think Monmouth's a place that a lot of people like to come on track. It's a place that people have a good time. It's a very family-friendly atmosphere, and the track's done a really good job of marketing the track and getting people out there and getting people to the races and making Monmouth a destination for not only local folks, but also tourists in the area. I hear a lot of tourists like to go to Monmouth. They hear, oh, Monmouth Park, if you're visiting the Jersey Shore, that's a destination you want to hit up. You want to go and see what it's like. So it's a cool place. Excited to be there, but also things are winding down here. So it's a little bittersweet on that front, too.
Sure, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, summer's coming, and yeah, we're excited to see it, Monmouth. But really appreciate your time, Matt. Yeah, always great insight, great race calling, and yeah, just too cool that I got to talk to you. So really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Tim. Appreciate it.
And thanks to Matt and all of our guests. And thank you to our viewers for joining me for the Paddock Press Report. I appreciate you joining me for this first ever edition. Once again, I'm Timothy Lateau. Be sure to like, hype, and subscribe. New editions, hopefully every week at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you again next week. And in the meantime, we'll see you at the races. Take care now.